Greetings, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. As you can see, I am once again on location, this time in a spot that's usually pretty quiet. It's usually dead here when it's not the weekends. This is the first Thursday I've ever been here to Pasaje Revolucion in Centro Tijuana. So I apologize if you see people walking by in the background, or if it's a little, you can hear people chattering. Uh, this is quieter than the last place and not as distracting because there's no reggaeton playing. So that, to me, is a positive. Thank you guys for your patience. I was having a very good conversation with our guest off air. I'm very excited to talk to him about his book. Before that, thank you guys for coming back. You returning listeners, subscribers, and patrons. If you are new to what we do here at TIR, welcome. So glad to have you. If you do enjoy what we do, please hit like. Also, please hit subscribe. We're noticing that a lot of people that watch the show have not subscribed. It is a passive gesture that goes a very, very long way. No champagne room tonight because these people are definitely going to kick me out and not let me stay late, and then I'll lose the Wi-Fi connection. But let's talk about the book, the graphic novel, Naked City. Wherever you are listening or watching the show, there's a link in the description to the book. It's the first line on the description. So Eric Drooker's Naked City is an evocative exploration of art, labor, and survival in the urban context of New York City. Drooker interrogates the lived realities of artists under capitalism, highlighting themes of alienation, commodification of creative labor, and the struggle to maintain authenticity in the face of systemic exploitation. The nakedness in Naked City becomes a metaphor for the stripping away of the facade that art and labor are separate. The protagonists, a singer, a painter, and a dancer, exemplify how artists navigate precariousness while creating works imbued with authenticity and human expression. Drooker's critique of the United States' neglect of its artists aligns with a materialist understanding of art as both a product of labor and a tool for societal reflection, yet one that is often undervalued within a profit-driven system. The book's nuanced portrayal of Manhattan as a volatile character in its own right amplifies the alienation of urban life. It captures the contradiction of cities, densely populated, yet isolating, centers of opportunity, yet battlegrounds for survival. All that being said, please welcome our guest, artist extraordinaire, Eric Drooker.
Hey, well, thank you, Jason. Thank you. Okay, I could handle
I
it.
usually have an applause button, but I can't bring my soundboard. That's a lot to bring with me.
Do you have the canned laughter?
Hell yeah, canned laughter. I have all kind of expletives that I can press buttons for.
You need all these tools in your kit. That's right.
Yes. It's like old school drive time radio. A relic of the past. But I have to ask the first question. Are you kind of the artist character in the book? Is that a little bit autobiographical?
It's a semi-autobiographical. The painter character, I suppose, is a kind of a younger, more naive version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
A stupider version of myself. But he's also just is a kind of a satire on the 19th century artiste, the starving artist in his garret there that was active in Paris. It's this fantasy that a lot of us artists like to harbor to this very day. And I guess what makes him a comic character in the story is that he's the last one to realize. In fact, he's the only one who doesn't realize that it's passed him by.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of art anymore. The public isn't interested in paintings of naked ladies when we have internet porn.
That was so. I want to talk a little bit about that. That was really interesting to me because I was talking to you off air. I have some very, very close friends of mine that, like I said, I toured as a musician, and I also worked in the Gulf of Mexico for a time. I'm from California, So sometimes when I was on land, I'd stay with these guys in New Orleans.
Where in California are you from?
I'm from the Bay, from
Okay.
Oakland.
Oakland. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oaktown. That's right. That's
No,
about a
I'm a Bay dude.
15-minute walk south from where I am now.
Are
I'm in
you in
South
the Bay,
Berkeley.
dude?
I'm in South Berkeley. No, I'm a native
What?
New Yorker, but I've been living in the East Bay the last 20 years or more. I go back and forth.
I had no idea you were in the Bay. Oh my God. I was there, I'm 47, so the majority of my life I spent in the Bay Area. I go back once a month. I still love it. I still think it's one of the most awesome places in the world.
Yeah, there's so much happening here, even now. Even with the culture under attack, there's a lot happening, especially in Oaktown.
Yes. Oh God, yes. San Francisco, sadly, I don't say this with any sort of joy, artistically has been dead for a while. Even when I was living in the Tenderloin in the aughts, you could still find like a pop-up museum of just kind of whatever artist throwing stuff up because it was cheap to rent space. But that's kind of a relic of the past, even in downtown San Francisco.
Yeah, not too many artists I know of can afford to live in San Francisco anymore, or New York City, or Boston, or Paris, or London, or
anywhere cool, right? You can't really live.
Yeah.
That's why it was kind of interesting. Like my friends that are artists in New Orleans, we met working in North Dakota. Because you work these shifts when you work in the oil fields. Of this shift we did, the hitch was 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So you save so much money in those 6 weeks that you're working because you don't have to spend anything for food. And so when they would go home, they kind of worked on some art stuff in their downtime because we worked 7 days a week for those 6 weeks, 12 to 18 hours a day. When they went home, then it was just let's paint, and we'll set up because they lived right by Jackson Square at the time, and I got to hang out with them and all the Jackson Square artists, and it was a learning experience for me because visual art painting is different than what I do with music, and their struggle I found interesting because it did remind me of your painter character in the story, in the sense of sometimes you don't realize when things have passed you by because you're living in that moment and can't get out of it.
You're the last one to realize that it is past.
And when you try to do something artistic out of the norm because you've been making a living, like once you figure out how to make a living, and all right, maybe you can expand on this. That's just what you do. And so the guy kind of figured out what it was. I like cityscapes, so I just paint him cityscapes all day long. But I want to get out and do more and do this different thing. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel
it's true. I mean, there's the painter character, but the main protagonist of the story is the young woman who's a musician, right? Part of what the story is about. I have several themes that I'm weaving together here, but that it's not really that different. Visual art and the music or the dance or any of the arts. I mean, they're all of them are more precarious than ever in the United States now, here getting into the middle of the 21st century. And then there's the definition of success. I think each artist has to define what success means for themselves. You can't go by the societal definition. That's
Agreed.
Not a very healthy path to take. And as you mentioned earlier, it's definitely a process, learning how to incorporate the art and the creativity into your daily life, whether or not you're making a living at it. I mean, making money from it so that you could pay off the landlord every 4 weeks and pay the utilities and buy a little food. That's a whole other art form. What about just being able to get the melody that's playing in your head through your fingers, through the instrument, so that you could share it when other people can hear it? That's the main thing. I mean, that's the first challenge. trying to get people to then give you money for it, that's a whole other challenge.
Which is,
We get into.
I want to put I do want to hit the singer up because, of course, as like I told you, someone that did music for a gajillion years, I do have to talk about the singer. But what really struck a chord with me in reading about the artist, to the point where I'm having, like, as I'm reading the graphic novel, I'm having these moments, which, is
Good of recognition, huh? Certain things where it seemed familiar or close to home.
a lot of it hits a little close to home, even though I
Yeah.
never spent that kind of time in New York. Of course, I played New York a million of times. I just I never wanted to make the LA or New York move.
It could be
Um,
any big city, really.
that's
Naked
how I
City.
looked at
It's based in New York,
it.
Manhattan, where I was born and raised. But New York is just the archetypal city. It could be any. It could be Chicago. It could almost be Mexico City or London or wherever. Johannesburg, Manila, Beijing. All these 21st century cities are becoming indistinguishable. The
That's very
architecture
true.
starts to all look the same after a
That's how
while.
I feel. The last tour I did in 2019, or yeah, across all North America, Canada, and the U.S., and then we
Mhm.
did Brazil. Brazil still
Mhm.
had some things. We're playing like in these little bitty favela towns in Brazil, but
Yeah,
other
that's
than
right.
like that kind of stuff, I
Mhm.
agree with you wholeheartedly. Every major city in the United States, North America for the most part, looks exactly. All the lofts look the same. All the downtown areas look the same. But in that, there's still a life in some of these places. Like New York, to me, still has a personality. I think San
Mhm.
Francisco still
Yeah, that's
has
true.
a personality that, to me, is just that is a San Francisco thing, regardless of the gentrification. And your artist is tired of drawing the same cityscapes, and he wants to draw these nude models and sells for a while. But it's the painting that he does of an actual person washing a
Mhm.
window that resonates with people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was very spontaneous, wasn't it? He was making this transition between landscapes, nudes. He contains multitudes, right? And then a guy comes passing by his window with a squeegee, cleaning each window systematically, going down, starting at the top floor and moving his way down like they do in the big city. And he really quickly just paints a canvas of the figure in the window, the window washer, really quick, like 2 or 3 minutes, and it's done. And he doesn't really think much of it. And then the next day, when he visits the gallery, his dealer, he's showing his dealer all of his latest paintings, all the paintings of the nude model who he's hired, and he's really pleased with. And the dealer thinks, okay, all right, naked ladies, good, good. What's not to like about naked ladies? Okay, they always sell, but what else? What else you got? What else you got there, Rembrandt? And he says, well, there's this. And he shows him this spontaneous painting he did of the guy cleaning the window. And the dealer's eyes pop out. He's really, for some reason, he's really excited about this. Maybe the style or the spontaneity of the paint strokes really excites the dealer. And he seems way more interested in this painting of a guy with holding a squeegee than any of the naked lady paintings he's being shown. Uh, in chapter 3, we learn that, hey, no one's interested in naked lady paintings anymore because everyone's too busy watching pornography anyway. The public is more interested in kind of the latest thing, the latest fad. And the gallery owner is trying to find what's the next big thing that the public is going to go for to make their fall fashion statement or what have you. And shockingly, it ends up being this man with a squeegee, a guy cleaning a window, sells immediately. The painting sells like before the paint is even dry on the canvas. He sells that one first before any of the nude paintings sell. The gallery sells the the window washer. And then, of course, he wants more paintings of the window washer. And the painter can't understand why the public is so excited about a picture of a guy with holding a squeegee washing a window. And the gallery owner says, who cares? Who cares why they like it? Oh, but you've struck a chord with the public. They're clamoring for more. Just make more. Don't ask why. Just paint more paintings of the squeegee man, and I'll make you famous.
Which is funny because that becomes kind of a theme between the gallery owner or director and the painter, which is give me more of this thing and I'll make you famous, which I found funny because as a musician that was getting older, you don't want to believe that music is a young person's game, because I don't think it's exactly a young person's game, especially now in the era of atomization. You know, there's a market for everything. Somebody somewhere is like, yeah, do you got any middle-aged guys that make experimental loud screamy shit? Because I definitely want to hear it. You know what I mean? So
yes, I hear exactly what I'm in a similar boat that you're in, Jason. But it's true that at least the way that music and all the arts are marketed, especially in the U.S., but all over the world, it's really aimed at that demographic, the youth market. Part of it is it's totally artificial, right? It's the next thing. It's the new kid on the block. Literally, it's this teenage kid or a teenage girl's body that the corporations are selling you. But it's something new and fresh. Seems to be in the way that they market anything. Cars. Get rid of your old car. It works perfectly well, but it's time to get the new Tesla, or the new, whatever the new pair of Nikes or Converse. And it's very much of a it is kind of a young person's game. That is the marketing, the marketing and the promo aspect of it.
And I don't know if it's really still a young person's game when young people right now, the numbers are coming out, they're not economically viable to really market the way you could market at them post World War II, through the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
I think that's a big reason why you're seeing, kind of like, if you think about the 80s and the late 70s, music wise, granted, there's always new young people coming out doing new stuff, right? That's when you get punk and all the new wave and all that stuff comes with hip hop. This all comes about in the 70s and early 80s, but it doesn't sell. People forget that rap, there's only a handful of actual records you could buy, and the distribution isn't nationwide like people think it is. Same thing with a lot of this other music.
Quite a while.
It took quite a while. And so the music that's popular, people are buying, is, let's just call it adult contemporary, right? Air Supply, I think, is the number one band at the end of the decade of the 70s. So it's this kind of music that we're going to pejoratively call yacht rock. I'm not going to lie and say I'm not a fan of Steely Dan. I spent way too long last night on the stream talking about how much I love Asia and the musicianship with those bands. That being said, there's no youth movement in that music, yet that music was extremely popular. And it is funny when you see some of those artists that kind of aged out in the kind of by the mid 80s, and they weren't even, some of them weren't even that old, but it was like, now we have this youth thing that's coming and you guys are gone past, but keep sending me this music and I'll make you a star again, kid. And that's kind of how I felt about the artist, that, even the way you drew him, he does seem a bit older than the other characters. And like you said, doesn't realize that he's not going to have the Renaissance moment that the young starlet, the young singer, ends up having, because she is the young singer. She is the young thing. Her body is the commodity that they can then sell.
That's
I
right.
found that
That's right.
that
The
hit
youth
close to
culture,
home.
or even just the blue jeans that she's wearing. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
real thing that they're selling. That
Ooh.
the Gap jeans, all of that youth culture demographic. I noticed. I'm sure you noticed this independently, but the word hipster in the last couple of decades has taken on a whole different meaning than when we were growing up. When we were kids, hipster meant something almost the opposite of what it means now. I think today it kind of refers to a marketing demographic of young
Yes.
white, urban people who have a little money in their pocket who are going to buy what blue jeans or some commodity like that. But when I was younger, hipster it was a very specific terminology, and it referred to people who were hip to something, like in the know, you know, aware people, artists, bohemians. It was mainly a black thing, of course, black jazz musicians, hipsters, but also white bohemians, abstract
Yeah.
painters in the 50s, the early Dylan. I mean, these are all hipsters, and they were acting hip. They were more aware than all of the square culture. So that's sort of
That's a
what
word that we don't say
hipster
enough.
meant.
I think we don't say square enough. And
Square. No, that's dropped out of the. A lot of things
you,
have fallen out of the
it might have fallen
vocabulary.
out for them. I still say square. Like I don't drink or do drugs. I haven't my whole time doing music, which when doing arty weird music, you definitely stand out a lot. So I have no problem, saying I'm square.
L7. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Jason's a
or
real L7. Yeah.
that's what they when I walk up, it's like, oh, that's Jay. Somebody's driving now.
Well, didn't I seem to remember that Thelonious Monk, his middle name was, you remember what his middle name was?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Sphere. But it's not on his birth certificate, but he added that Thelonious Sphere Monk. And when the interviewer asked him, "What's that about?" The middle name, he said, "Oh, I just put that in so that I would never be mistaken for a square."
See what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
we need to
we
bring back
already
square
loved him.
because
We
that
already loved
ultimately.
Thelonious, but that was genius
But Eric,
and
would you
funny as
agree?
hell.
Would you agree?
You guys
Cats
have had a
like.
sense of humor on top of it all.
But Eric, would you agree if you and I were sitting, chilling in you're in South Berkeley, if we were just chilling in like I don't even know where you can chill in West Oakland anymore because so much stuff has changed. But if we were chilling on Broadway in Oakland,
Mhm.
right, and we see what some people would call hipsters, you and I would probably be like, "Oh, dude, looks hella square. Like the cat's hella square."
That's
You
right.
know?
Yes, hipsters have become kind of square. Like they're not particularly aware of anything. They're just more kind of following a certain blueprint.
Yeah.
They're probably white people from the suburbs who have moved into a big city, and they're trying to dress themselves in a way that so that they'll blend in as quickly as possible. They'll buy their clothing at Urban Outfitters, which I think has perfected that demographic. They
Yeah.
understand that people want to look urban so that they look hip as if they've always been there, even if they just arrived 5 minutes ago. Not that there's any shame to being growing up in the suburbs, hey,
No, it's just
but
where you grow up.
that's right. Hey, none of us have any control over
No.
where we're from, or our gender or ethnicity we showed up as. But it's what we're going to do with it, what we're going to make out of it, and what kind of alliances are we gonna make with it, and what
And
are we gonna how are we gonna share it?
I definitely want to talk about another thing that you do in the book that I found, and I don't know how on purpose this was, but in my gajillion trips to New York City and in any major metropolitan area I've been in, and anywhere on the globe, they're densely packed areas. But when you live in one of these cities and you're trying to quote unquote make it, whatever make it is, like you said, it is a very relative term, a very relative term. You can feel so alone. Even living here in Mexico, which I think is a very welcoming culture for all intents and purposes.
Mhm.
because I don't speak the language all that well. I'm visibly an outsider. Um, there is an alienating feeling. I mean, here I am doing a podcast in the middle of a mall, and it's just like nobody gives a shit. There's something isolating about living in a big city, the struggle to survive, trying to live in a big city and try to do your art. And I think you encapsulate that very well in the dancer and the musician, the aspiring musician. The dancer to me feels like a character that has kind of got it figured out, in the sense of I can dance and do my thing, and I do this thing that's probably I'm never going to really make it, whatever that is, but I'm going to work these crazy jobs, do the dance thing, but I can do whatever I want to do dance wise. I'm going to live this bohemian lifestyle, because that's what I got out of that character. They were the more wild person in the book.
Yes.
Like, hey, let's fucking go to the artist's house, have a threesome. They did.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Alex, the street dancer. Yes.
Yeah.
Seems to be the only character who has, who knows how to have a good time, for one, but who, seems to have an angle on it. And of course, Alex is a native from the Bronx.
Yeah, the Bronx. Yeah.
She says, I mean, it's a little mysterious. We don't get much of a backstory with Alex like we do with the painter, or we do with Isabel, where at the end of the first chapter, we have a flashback of her childhood, and we realize that she's, her mother was snatched away from her when she was 5 years old.
That was rough.
There's a knock on the door. The mother from Tijuana, there, Mexico.
That's what I do have to add this. I'm reading this book after the election, and and walking across the border is not as bad as it was a few years ago, when there would be large families of mostly like Guatemalan refugees. They're just stuck, and they would tell you as you were walking through, okay, if you're trying to wait for your asylum, you stand over here. If you're just coming back to the States, you go this way. Now that's all gone. It's been gone for a while, right? The Biden administration kind of ixnayed that. And I do have a fear, we're probably going to do a show about this next week, of how hard this administration wants to take deportation. And most of my friends here are deportees. So that one hit really close to home. And to paint the picture, not from the perspective of the deported, but of the people they left behind, I thought that was really interesting. Are you the child of a deportee? Because that was pretty accurate.
Well, and we know where any big city, people who are here illegally, if you even accept that term. Like, how could a person be illegal? It's almost a contradiction in terms, or it's almost a non sequitur. But it's definitely easy to scapegoat people who don't have all of their papers in order. Yes. Right? It's this hysteria that's sweeping not just the U.S. but throughout Europe, and a lot of people are getting on the bandwagon. And I was really disturbed to learn that almost half of Latino men in the U.S. voted Republican, voted for Trump just now. Yeah. After everything he's saying, and all the millions of people who look just like they do, who he plans to deport in these coming months. And yet, well, it's complex. There's the slam the door behind you syndrome. Part of it is that. There's the machismo element of it. And then there's also the naked fact that the Democrats weren't offering much of an alternative, that is, they were failing to articulate much of a, compelling reason why you should go for them. But back to this issue of deportation and being an undocumented immigrant and illegal. This is kind of the secret theme of Naked City. This is probably the most painful detail in an otherwise humorous story. I'm calling it a comedy.
Okay.
Even if it's maybe more accurately a tragic comedy. Isabel's story is is pretty serious. The painter who she meets, and she gets a job working
Mm-hmm.
for him. She's so desperate to make rent money that she becomes his nude model. This is before she becomes successful as a musician. But the painter who she meets he's kind of a goofball. I mean, he's the
Mm-hmm.
comic relief in the story. I made sure that the story that deals with these serious subject and contemporary themes, that it would have enough laughs in it every other page to keep you wanting to turn the pages. But Isabel, she hitchhikes to the big city, right? She hitchhikes from Detroit, comes to New York, and we don't learn until the very end of the first chapter that she's not just coming to the city to be make it as a singer songwriter. She's running away from something. And she's specifically running away because she doesn't know if she's legal or not. Her mother was deported when she was a kid. She doesn't have her birth certificate. She thinks she was born in the U.S. Her father always told her she was born in the U.S. She was probably born here, but she doesn't know that for certain. And of course, the latest news that we're just getting this past week is that the president has announced that he's ending birthright citizenship.
He's trying. Yeah, it got stopped
to.
already.
Yes,
Yeah,
easier said than done. But that's something that we've had in the U.S. since right after the Civil War. We've had that. You know, where we treat our immigrants terribly, and we use them, exploit them for their cheap labor. But if you're born in the U.S., then you're in like Flynn. It's one of the things that the U.S. is doing correctly. A lot of European countries don't have that. Like if you're in Germany, if you're a Turk in Germany, and your grandparents were living there in the 50s, and you were born there, and your parents were born there, you still don't. You're not considered full. You still don't have full German citizenship. And we're not talking about Nazi Germany. We're talking about democratic Germany as it is now, which is ironically one of the last bastions of liberal democracy. You know, Germany of all places. So this is a theme that I'm trying to kind of weave into the story in a very subtle way. That Isabel, even when she's becoming successful and then making money as a musician, she could never really relax and enjoy it. She always has to look over her shoulder and see, are they coming after her? Are the police or the ICE police or the immigration or Homeland Defense?
And it's used, and you do something else in the book that I think is really fascinating. And again, wherever you guys are watching or listening to the show, there's links in the description to pick up Eric's book. She eventually, and I know I'm kind of skipping all over the place here, she eventually gets a deal, it seems like, a record deal, and fame and fortune are bestowed upon her. But there's a caveat, which is there's kind of a Weinstein-esque character as the label owners / manager, I guess she has.
Yes, that's right.
That's like kind of doing this the whole time, like the meme of the guy behind the tree doing this. And then finally, when he gets his opportunity, he's like, you know, I know the secret that you don't have papers, and I'm not going to call ICE. So you got to do something for me. And, you know, of course, she punches him and
Right. Well, it's not even clear how he discovered this fact.
Exactly.
I guess he was doing his homework, being in complete control of her life. Yeah, being like the A&R man who discovers her in the first place, and then he almost acts as the producer and the manager. And I guess since he's controlling all of her money and taxes, somewhere along the way, he discovers the fact that she doesn't have her papers in order, or that at least he discovers that she doesn't know if she's legal or not. She's not certain. He knows that she feels vulnerable on this subject.
Which is more powerful, right? If you just pretend you know.
It's another way that he can exploit her. And it's not even clear. He almost frames it as a joke. Like, hey, come on, Isabel, you don't want it leaked out that you're undocumented, do you? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Seriously though. Seriously though. You have a beautiful voice. I like your music. You're a diamond. A diamond in the rough needs to be polished. You know, you need proper management. You know that this is my job. I could market you, and we could make a lot of money together. You trust me, Isabel. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what she's being told the whole time, and she is making a lot of money. She winds up having to move out of her SRO apartment way out in Flatbush, Brooklyn. She's
Mm-hmm.
living in one of these high-rise, super slender apartment buildings in Midtown Manhattan, like on the 50th floor or something. But she feels totally alienated. And no matter how successful she is, somehow she's all alone at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that tells her that something is up. Why am I all alone? Of course, that's one of the syndromes of New York or any big city. The ironies is that cities are very lonely places, even though you're surrounded by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people passing you on the sidewalk and passing you on the stairway of the very building that you live in and the elevator. How could you feel lonely when you're surrounded by this much of humanity and diverse group of people? And yet cities could be the most lonely places on the planet. So that's a
And
contradiction.
that I think it's a character also to me in the artwork. It's always walking alone in the city, maybe one other character you see, but it's always people walking alone in this great big city, which is kind of how I feel even when I close this computer and go, I'm going to walk to the bus. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, anyone who's halfway sensitive, that's all artists are. We're just people who are sensitive and are trying to make a living from our sensitivity. I think it was Ezra Pound who said that artists are the antennae of the culture, the antennae of the race. They're just that they're a little bit more sensitive or see things coming a little bit before they become obvious to the rest of the tribe. So Isabel she's in a vulnerable situation. She's worried and she thinks that any moment the whole thing is going to come crashing down.
Yeah.
She's successful, but it could end at any minute. The police could, she could be deported at any moment, and find herself behind bars or find herself back in Mexico somewhere where she doesn't know the language. All she knows is English. She's just another dumb American who is born and raised in the U.S. and doesn't really have too much perspective of other cultures. As much as she misses her mother, who was from Mexico. Her mother was deported when when Isabel was 5 years old. So she doesn't really have, she kind of lost that connection with her mother.
Another thing that I kind of gather, and I would add this about success, and I don't know how you feel. Sorry. I'll mute myself as the ambulance passes.
That just tells you that you're authentic. Jason is authentic. See, you hear those sirens in the background? He's in a big city.
Jason is authentically trying not to get shot, but no, I'm fine. But
maybe it was just an ambulance or something.
I think it was just an ambulance. But there's. Would you agree, because you've reached a certain level of success in being an artist? This wasn't self-published or put out by some fly-by-night publisher. This is a real deal graphic novel. A real deal PR person contacted me. There's a machine in the works. It may not be the biggest machine in the works.
Well,
there's still a machine in the works. Dark Horse is a real deal comic place.
It's one of the larger. I think after Marvel and DC comes Dark Horse, or Image Comics, I think, is in between. Dark Horse is one of the big ones. I don't think of Dark Horse as an indie publisher.
No.
It's a big corporate publisher, corporate conglomerate. And I've done a couple of other books with them over the years. I mean, this is a whole other subject. As artists, do we stick with indie labels or indie publishers or
This is what I'm getting at. When you hit a certain level of success, and if you live in a city like more so like Los Angeles or New York,
Mhm.
more so Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles is notorious for this. And if LA people are mad about it, I'm like, sorry, now the stray dogs are in here. So
if the LA
there,
people are mad about it, we could have a
if
little conversation.
we can have a Bay Area LA fight. But if people look at you and they go, oh, that's Eric, he's published on blah blah blah. That's how they introduce you. And so now it's like, who are you on the ladder of success? Are you worthy of my time to talk to? And so you do find yourself sometimes surrounded by people that want to hang out with you because they may perceive you as someone that can help them get their thing off the ground, whatever their thing
Yes.
is. And
Yes.
to me, that can cause another kind of alienation. Um, have you suffered from that in being an artist?
Yeah, I wouldn't complain or say that I've suffered from it. I've definitely experienced it on both ends. You know, approaching art when I was younger, artists who were more established and successful, even just to ask them to write a blurb for the back cover of my book. You know, there's that, and then on the other side of the coin, I've experienced being contacted by people younger than me or older than me, but just who hadn't reached success, and they're asking me to blurb their book or to illustrate, you know, to do the artwork for their graphic novel. They're going to write it, and they want me to do the artwork for it because I'm already kind of a known quantity. You know, so many of these, you know, this aspect of fame is double-edged, right? It's double-edged. In a way, one of the good things about fame is you're reaching a lot of people. Then you have influence. That is, if the content of your music or the lyrics of your music or your visual art is about something you care strongly about, you want to be communicating to people. And I just think of art. Art is just a language. Artwork is just a means of communication for me. It's more of that than it is what we're always taught from childhood, that it's a means of expression. We're expressing ourselves. Yeah. But that's not why I wanna be communicating specific ideas and things, and I don't want it to be too abstract. I want people to understand what it is that I'm communicating on the other
And,
end.
and now
I
we're
don't
getting
want
to
people
the
to just interpret it however they want. You know, people are going to read into it anyway. And for
exactly.
that very reason, I'm trying to have as much clarity as possible. But these, you know, some of these subjects we're getting into now are deep, and I don't have any ultimate answers, but they're excellent questions that I made a point of including in this story. In this particular book, I've done a few other graphic novels, but this one is really about not just the painter, but also there's an artist, a visual artist, a musician, a street dancer, whose mother was a poet up in the Bronx. It's
Yeah.
really a group of bohemian artists, and what they're learning they all have in common, even though each one of them is on a different rung on the ladder, you know. But what all of them are realizing is that it's getting damn near impossible to survive as artists in the 21st century. Yeah, they could survive and make food or have a day job, but we're talking about, is it possible to survive as an artist, to have that be your full-time job? Most of the artists I know, they teach art, or they're
Yep.
music teachers or something.
Yep.
And there's no shame in that. In fact,
Yeah.
maybe that's even a higher calling. Being a teacher, God knows, is an art form unto itself. But if you're working a day job or washing dishes so that you could come home and compose your music, not that there's anything morally wrong with it. Hey, maybe it just gives you even more of a connection to the rest of humanity and deeper understanding of the human condition. But it does mean that you have less time to devote to your art. You're not able to be working on your art full time if you have a full-time day job. So that's one of the contradictions that I'm getting into in the story. And in the first chapter with Isabel, she's playing her music on the streets. She's playing her music down the subway platforms with her pork pie hat upside down, people tossing coins into the hat. She's making a few bucks a day, but not enough to pay the rent or pay for food. So that's why she's desperate and has to get a job, has to get a day job. And each one of them is worse than the next. She's washing houses. She's being a telemarketer for a while. She's working at the McDonald's for a while. But finally, she finds this job that isn't so bad. Posing as a nude model for this artist, who she's a little bit wary of at first when she first meets him, and she's ready to just split. Like, as soon as anything starts to feel weird, I'm out of here. But he turns out to be the real deal. He's a real painter. He's just trying to paint her anatomy. He wants to paint flesh and blood. He's tired of painting landscapes and cityscapes. He wants to paint people.
And it's an adorable. They have an adorable relationship, actually, in the book, which is something I want to get into before they're hitting the lights on me. I do want to talk about this idea of selling out, and I think you were just hitting on it.
Yeah, we're already kind of touching on it here and there.
But let's grab it. Let's grab it in the buttocks. When you said you make art, for a lot of people to understand, I think a lot of people that get into making, if you're serious about it, if you're halfway serious about it, you want people to dig it, right? You want people to dig what you paint, want people to dig the pictures that you take, you want people to dig the shitty songs that you write, whatever the fuck you do, you want people to dig it, right? And if whatever you do crosses over and you get outside of your small scene, because it doesn't take much for someone to call you a sellout. In the world that I exist in leftist podcasting,
yes,
technically this show should be selling out because I'm talking to someone that's an artist, that isn't an academic, and the book you wrote isn't about, overthrowing the capitalist superstructure. It's about
not directly anyhow, right? That's right.
But you know what I mean?
That's right. I'm entertaining people along the way, but it's definitely offering a pretty scathing critique of the economic system we find ourselves in.
I will say, Eric, you do have a very smart PR person that did hit me up because they know what kind of show we do here. So when I was approached with your book, my first question was like, "You remember the show, right?" Because I didn't know. I didn't know about
title,
it. Like,
it's in the very name of the show, right?
They're like, "Oh yeah, no, it's cool. You'll dig it." They're like, "You'll dig it."
And Jason, this term of selling out, I'm not hearing it as much. I mean, I used to be accused of that, and I myself was very quick to accuse musicians of that and people of that. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, it seemed like back in the in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when Tom Morello and Zach De La Roca, signed a contract with who was it, Sony, when Rage Against the Machine went big, they're selling out. But of course, I've talked to those guys. I did an album cover for them. I've talked with Zach, and we talk about how it is a double-edged sword. Okay, in a sense, it is selling out. They're giving you money, but if they're allowing you to have your message intact, if they're not censoring the message, you could look at it, or convince yourself anyway, of the fact that you're communicating to more people. You have a much larger audience now. Isn't that what you wanted? I mean, you're in a more influential position.
You'd be surprised what people say when you don't do what cats think you're supposed to do. And I think the idea of selling out for me has always been, when I was younger, like you said, I was quick to be like, so and so's a sellout because they signed a major label deal. So and so's a sellout because they're playing this venue. And the more I got to know people, I used to live at a place, I don't know if you know it, in West Oakland called Soundwave Studios. It's a music rehearsal
I'm
recording
sure
studio.
I've gone past it, and I know I have a lot
It's
of
on Wood Street. Unless you were doing some,
well,
maybe you went there
Boots.
for
I'm
some.
thinking he stayed
Okay,
in
yes,
Oakland. Boots Riley.
that is that's where
I've hung
Boots
out with
did.
him over the years, and
That's
he's
where Boots
managing
did.
to he's finding the sweet spot between fame and success and money, and yet he's keeping his message, on point.
He's kind of a perfect example, in my opinion, because Boots actually did a lot of Sorry to Bother You at that studio. So if you know Boots, you can tell him.
Yes.
I talked to Jason. He used to work at, be like the black guy that used to work at Soundwave. He would know exactly what you're talking about. Or even add, he was in a band with his wife, and then he'll be like, oh, that guy. So he's kind of this interesting template that exists almost on an island, because as we say, success is relative.
That's right.
There's some filmmakers that might not think he's successful, but you and I are going to look at him, especially me, look at a guy that was a rapper for a gajillion years, and a certain kind of rapper as well, a rapper that had a very, very upfront, not just political message, but like a Marxist message.
Overtly political, yeah.
Like in the 90s,
to the
right?
Left of definitely to the left of
everything,
to the left of Dead Prez. I mean,
everything.
Boots, he doesn't just call himself a Mark. He comes right out and says, "No, man, I'm a communist."
Yeah,
I'm a communist, so that no one could red bait him, because he's already announcing that in his interview. And he comes from a line of radical activists and grew up around Black Panthers and all that.
And he's been able to do this thing where he can make these movies and have big time Hollywood stars in the movies.
Yes.
And again, I don't know, I haven't talked to him in a long time. Last time I talked to him was when they were made, because they've made Sorry to Bother You, like I said, in my house for the most part, right? But he was able to do another thing after that, and now he's got a new movie coming out, and he seems to be one of these people that a lot of people want to work with. I don't know how that translates into financial success. Of course, I wish him the best. And I think the fact that you can get financial success is a little different, because I think a generation prior looked at almost any kind of success outside of your milieu as selling out. And that really gets complicated with Nirvana for a lot of people.
That's right. That's the other example.
And now we're in this
machine, and then Nirvana was when they signed to a major
label. It gets complicated, right? But
yes.
I think right now we're in this moment of getting the bag, and as everybody wants to get the bag, we've lost the concept of selling out, so we call it something different.
Yes.
They call it grifting. In my world, they say so-and-so is making some sort of adverse political turn. And I'm like, look, if you're really going to say someone's selling out, like if tomorrow I was like, all I want to do is talk to musicians and movie makers because more people watch those shows, I'm going to get a better YouTube payout. I'm going to get more subscribers, which means I get paid on a better percentage. It just works out for me better. I'm going to lose whatever I built. The few tens of thousands of subscribers I have now, all that shit goes away once I say I want to do something different, because they didn't sign up for that. So to make these pivots, there has to be a legitimate financial incentive that you can physically see, and not just weird ideological shifts.
Yeah,
and I think
I would agree. I would agree with all that.
With music stuff, if you look at a band like Rage, and I don't know them. Again, like I said, I only know Boots. I know Boots toured with Tom Morello, and he spoke of him very highly. They never changed the message.
That's right.
And I think the music they released at the time in which they released it and who they played with, and they didn't have to do anything, that muddied the message. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me is more like fuck you, mom, for a lot of people than it is, a middle finger to power. And also, if you think about groups like NWA and F the Police, as a friend of mine said the other day, what adolescent likes police? Like, that's not a real political statement. But when we're lumping all these things together in the same basket as like important political music, I think that bands that actually do have a message, it gets lost in there. We're going to call them sellouts at some point because they have some sort of success. If they want to do something slightly different, I mean, I'm not mad if Zach De La Rocha wants to make a rap album about talking about how fresh he is. You can't be, for 40 years. There's got to be different sides to your character.
That's the thing. I think that we can't be too pure. I mean, when we're young, certainly when I was an angry young man, I thought that and I was very pure and more ideologically uptight. But I also observed a pattern on the left, and I think it's a pathology on the left, especially if you look back on the history of the left, especially in the U.S., is that we all too often ghettoize ourselves, right? We don't want, it's almost like we don't want to go out and step out into the spotlight. It's easier to sit off in the corner and be kind of mumbling and complaining about anyone who's getting any, success or notoriety. Never mind the fact that even the people who are getting this economic success, it's usually not even very much. It's not as much as you would think. You would think that these musicians are getting big time, but they're not really paying them all that well as you think. I guess the big sellout thing that I do in my life, as much as possible, is in the mainstream. I do album covers and magazine covers, the New Yorker magazine. I'm a regular cover artist for them. That's the most mainstream thing that I do. And that's corporate, that's the Condé Nast Corporation, But I feel like this is a way that I'm getting my I think of my magazine covers as just glorified street posters. Instead of wheat pasting them up on the brick wall at 2 a.m. of the Lower East Side or East Oakland or Mexico City, if the message is intact, if I was able to keep that much integrity and have the imagery and the social criticism intact and clear in the image, and they're willing to put that on the cover of their magazine and even pay me a little bit to help, me pay off my landlord, then it's all good as far as I'm concerned. It's not, it's all, it's win-win. It's win-win even for the public, even for a young, whoever, the activist, because someone was able to break through and have some social criticism in the mainstream. I mean, that's what I've been trying to do my whole adult life, is infiltrate the mainstream. This is what Boots Riley has been somewhat successful at, infiltrating the mainstream.
Yeah.
Well, that television series he put out last year, it's on
I'm
Amazon,
a Virgo.
Right? Jeff Bezos is making money for. So Boots has already accepted the fact he can't be too pure. No one is spotless.
Yeah.
And yet he's keeping his message intact. They're not telling him to change very much. So in a sense, he feels like he's exploiting Amazon. He's using them to get his message of capitalism across. And anyone with any modicum of intelligence is going to see, oh, yes, there's many layers of social contradictions going on here, but that's part of what his artwork is about. I mean, that's part of what makes it interesting. That's part of what makes it outrageous when you see Boots Riley on a big screen and in a shopping mall. Is whoa. How the hell did Boots manage to get his message this far? How did he manage to infiltrate the mainstream to this degree? And how much farther are they going to allow him to go before
it's interesting
they slam shut? And
Boots is interesting because I feel like a lot of the anti-capitalist movies that have come out over the last few years, even the ones that have won awards, they always end with this: there is no alternative. And in everything,
right. The inevitability. We're supposed to feel hopeless. And
that's the darkness of the movie, right? It's like, wow, capitalism sucks, but let's go, keep existing in this system that sucks, and this is just what it is. I feel like he does try to talk about, but if we organize, we do this, we do that. He does try to give a solution to the problem in his films. I really do believe he's trying to, which I'm still shocked they keep allowing him to make movies.
Yes. And it's not lost on him. I mean, he knows that this is a window of opportunity. He's not taking this for granted. They're going to allow him to jump through this window a couple more times. And it's true. He's not only diagnosing the problem, the economic inequality and exploitation, but he offers concrete solutions, which in Boots's case, and I would totally agree, it's about people being organized. Yeah, well, that's easy to say. Specifically, organizing radical militant labor unions. We're not going to have much of an effect as artists or as workers if we're just complaining, or banging our heads against the wall as individuals. But if we organize with other workers, other cultural workers, if we're artists, but just workers across the board, fast food workers, teachers. My mother was in the school teachers union, so I grew up in a union household. So I guess I learned some of this early on when she went out on strike. That's a stereotype that people are just lazy. They don't want to work. I realize that when you go out on strike, you're still going to work. You're getting up early in the morning. In fact, you have to get up earlier in the morning. You still have to go to work, but you're not entering the building. You're then walking on the picket line, circling the building for the next 8 hours, day after day. Exactly. I think my mother was, the teachers union was on strike, I think, for a good 2 months back then when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I learned that it's all about sacrifice and organizing, but organizing with other people, with other workers. And that's what, Boots is always brings it on home to that, whether it's Sorry to Bother You, or that television thing he did.
I'm a Virgo.
I'm a Virgo, or this thing he's working on now with Demi Moore. I love Boosters, or whatever it's going to be called. I have no doubt that he's going to get into some radical, militant labor organizing. Somehow he's going to work that in to his screenplay, because he's committed and he's experienced as an organizer. For years he was an organizer in Oakland. He knows what gets the goods. Direct, some forms of direct action gets the goods. Shutting down the port of Oakland, like he participated in during Occupy. I remember that Occupy. That was over a decade ago. I was down in Zuccotti Park in Lower Manhattan, but then I came back here to the East Bay, and I went to downtown Oakland. And we went out to the pier, and I saw Boots was out there with his megaphone, channeling people. You go this direction. You go out on this pier. He was like one of the organizers who were helping to shut down the port of Oakland. And he was working very directly, hand in glove, with the Longshoremen's Union, which is one of the most militant unions in the U.S., and has been for years. So he's always just very out front, talking about it every chance he gets. He just comes right out with it. And we're always amazed at how far he's able to go. But I think what that shows us is that the artists that we're busy, most of the time we're censoring ourselves. Cultural workers, we think that they're going to be busting us or censoring us so that we have the internal cop, right? We don't think we're going to be successful if we're too outspoken on, X, Y, and Z. So we subconsciously, we don't come right out and say what needs to be said. So they don't even need to censor us, because we're already just defining our borders as, like, I'm just going to write pretty love songs or just kind of angry punk rock lyrics, but I'm not gonna really have any deep analysis or suggest any solutions, because no, man, that's doctrinaire. I ain't no Marxist. I'm more of an anarchist myself, and get all hung up with, like the left has been doing for over a century now. The socialists are at war with the communists, who are bad-mouthing the anarchists, and the left has been so divided and so splintered for the last 150 years throughout Europe and in the US.
Well, I'll say this before we go, as they're trying to lock me in this underground mall I'm in. As you can see, people actually live here. I've
It
never been
looks
in
like
a
a
mall where
cool place you're in.
it's pretty badass. It's pretty badass. This is kind of a great opportune time because as people get pissed off about the realities of Trump that might have voted for Trump, instead of laughing at them, this is probably a time, the best time ever, to radicalize these people if you have the opportunity. I also want to say before we go, wherever you are watching or listening to the show, the first link in the description is Eric's book. So you can buy it, you can see for yourself um, the gorgeous artwork that for me just reminds me of what it's like to live in a big city. I don't live in a big city anymore. I live in a very nice place called Rosarito. I live off a dirt road. I see the ocean.
Beautiful. Whoa,
Uh,
I'm envious. But it's
but
true. It's
yeah,
true. If you're curious to see the pictures, if you look online or just go to my website, I have a lot of pages, sample pages you could look at. A lot of the artwork will be very familiar to you because you've already seen it
hmm
on album covers, on the Rage Against the Machine or the Faith No More, that album King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime.
yes,
A lot of my artwork is out there, in the global street art movement. Also, all dozens of New Yorker covers I've done in recent years. So, if you're familiar, if you like that work, the Naked City is really it's kind of a New Yorker cover come to life, but it's a 300-page novel. It's told in pictures, kind of using the language of comics. All the characters are talking in word balloons, and you could even hear what they're thinking and thought bubbles and all of that. But if you go to the website, just my name, Drooker.com, you could see a lot of the work and pages from the book. In fact, for no additional money, you could get a signed copy of the new book, and I'll even draw an original picture in there. I've been doing that. I have a couple of hundred people ordering it directly through my website. Each one has an original drawing on the front page. Just because, hey, I love drawing. It only takes me a couple of minutes, but each one is a little bit different. So if you like art, if there's something for your eyes, if you're feeling overwhelmed by these horrifying times we're in, why not take an art break? Allow a little more culture in your life, music, but then a little visual art will definitely improve your mood, guaranteed.
well, there you guys go. There's no better selling point than that. Also, King for a Day, my favorite Faith No More record. I got to know those guys. So Soundwave Studios is where their studio is. If you've been to their rehearsal studio, that's where it's at. It's at Soundwave.
Is that where they
They
Faith No More
rehearse.
recorded? They sent me the album, and I didn't listen to it for years, and I finally
I don't
played it.
remember. Damn.
And hey, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. This Mike Patton, the front man, I realized this is really good. I think the album went gold. I didn't know
I
it was
think it
going to be
did
such a
well.
hit. I would have asked
Yeah.
them for more money if I knew it was going to be if I knew it was going to be a hit. I would have said, "Hey fellas, why don't you pay my rent for the next year instead of just for a month or two?" But
Ask
hey,
Boots to take you to that place. It's
yeah,
like
that's right.
it's a I would say it's a Bay Area music museum when you walk in because you see the gold records and it's not like
Mm.
it's really grungy. It smells like weed and beer. Someone behind the counter is probably stoned. They'll let you walk around and you can see all the bands and that have been
Mm.
there. Everyone from In Vogue to, like I said, Faith No More, all the metal bands, all the punk bands, every rap group from the Bay Area has recorded or rehearsed or done a video there.
Digital
Uh,
Underground.
yes, Digital
Yep.
Underground was huge there. So all their stuff is there. Over the bathroom is the Sex Packets thing. And then there's the gold record right next to it from that album. So
So
yeah,
much
yeah,
great
yeah.
music. Also, the Dead Kennedys.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be friendly with Jello Biafra. He's contacted me for artwork. He's used my artwork on a couple of his projects. But just the punk and the hip hop that's come out of this, this few square miles over the years is it's pretty inspiring. So I feel like I'm in good company with all my fellow cultural workers. That's a term I want. I want to get back into circulation. And to all the
You're
people
in a great
listening,
place.
the old people listening to this podcast, I'm sure many of you are creative individuals. I would encourage you to keep going, keep doing what you're doing, man. Whether it's audio, music, or visual art, or dance, hell, architecture, whatever it is. Keep doing it. Keep using your imagination is the only thing that's going to save us at this point.
Oof.
We need more imagination. So keep doing what you're doing, but let's crank the volume up a little bit. I think it's time to turn it up. They're certainly turning it up way high on the other end. So we have to turn it up, not just literally, but in terms of our intellect. We have to be more intelligent, more introspective, and more innovative. Maybe not using the same tactics that we've been using over the years of just getting pissed off and smashing the ATM machine. They're ready for that. In fact, they make money from that. You smash it, and then they have to repair it, and they're making money every time they have to reinstall it. So maybe think of some other things that we haven't tried yet that might be a little bit more concrete and might be bringing people together more rather than finding things that are divisive, that are going to make us argue with one another over tactics. That's why, again, I think organizing on all fronts and every way, organizing your own little band to meet once or twice a week to rehearse. That's a form of organizing. Jason, God knows how difficult that is to just three or four people to show up on a regular basis.
Shit for this show. That's why. Yes, that's why it's just me, because I'm tired of cat herding. But
right. Hey, that's why I'm solo most of the time, just as a solo artist, because at least this way I feel like I have artistic control. But I don't have any illusions that if I want my artwork to travel, I'm dependent on other people, and the editors, and the people who are going to print the artwork, the people who are going to drive the truck and distribute the CDs or the magazines or the street posters, whatever it is. I'm totally dependent on a whole network of other workers, none of whom are getting paid particularly well. None of whom have probably gotten a raise in over 20 years now. And everyone is understandably kind of pissed off and wants something to be shook up and is ready for a change. But what kind of a change? When we call ourselves radicals, yeah, but what flavor radical are you? We have a radical in the White House now. We're not talking about that kind of radical, extremism. Radical just means is an extremist, right? Or here's another definition. I heard radical is the root word. It's the root, like radish. You're going to a radical goes to the root of the problem. That's what a radical is. Someone who just doesn't just change the window dressing or change the melody, but is trying to analyze and get to the root, the underlying roots, and address the roots of the problem. So there's that. In that sense, I think it's important for people to become radicalized, have a deeper understanding of what goes on below the surface.
Thank you, Eric, for taking the time to talk to me. I'm really glad we finally got to do this. Again, wherever you guys are watching, listening to the show, the first link in the description is Eric's book. And let's play some very loud music. And I am